This podcast is made possible by the generous support of the American people through the United States Agency for International Development. The content of this podcast are the sole responsibility of its creators and does not necessarily reflect the views of USAID or the United States government.
Welcome back to the second part of our discussion on natural resource management and conflict. This is an issue that I, for one, would like to bring to the attention of our leaders on the one hand, and there is this African Protected Area Congress coming up, organized by the IUCN in July in Rwanda. And I'm hoping that Ulysse and myself will be there and that we can again talk about this issue, bring it to the attention of those who are leading the conservation community. And hopefully there will be some other leaders there, not just the conservation community, but also leaders as in political leaders, and see how to raise awareness about this problem, because it is a serious problem, and I think it is increasingly so, and it needs to be dealt with in an expedient manner.
I guess there are, again, two issues that sort of spring to mind. We talked about this the other night when I first arrived. You know, to what end are groups like Boko Haram and the militias in Burkina and Mali and Chad, what's their end game? What is it that they're wanting to do for a start? So that's the first question, because I don't quite understand it. And secondly, one thing we haven't touched on, you mentioned it very briefly, is the issue of diamonds in Sierra Leone, but how natural resources fuel finance conflicts as well. Charles Taylor was extremely adept at selling logs to the Chinese and others who were not so quite so scrupulous in terms of their market research about where logs are coming from. So once inside a conflict, maybe not, natural resources don't start the conflict, but they certainly perpetuate them. And, you know, that's something that maybe needs to be addressed as well, in some way. I mean, same with Al-Shabaab in East Africa. Evidence has shown that elephant poaching is funding the purchase of arms, for example. So there are some fairly strong linkages. But again, the sort of indiscriminate type militia attacks you see in northern Nigeria, Burkina Faso, villagers being killed for seemingly random reasons, that I don't quite understand.
I mean, Ulysse, you have been right close to that. And I'm wondering, we talk about poachers. And traditionally we think that, well, they're poachers. So you get a team of, so you get a team of rangers to go out there, but it doesn't look like the rangers.
No, it's not look like that. And even all the time, we don't know what is going on, because we don't even have revendication after the attack. We don't know really who is doing that. In fact, who is it? The terrorists? Is it Boko Haram? Is it? We don't know. We have just the attack. People die, and then what's going on next? We don't know. So, really, what happened in Benin? I don't know.
I'm wondering whether it's part of the international context of having Mali, Burkina, at least wanting to do something about the terrorists in their territory, and that perhaps these terrorists need a new staging ground, a new safe haven, and Benin being just next door with a national park that is far away from government presence, as you mentioned, Terry. Perhaps it's just a confluence of different elements that has led to this situation.
Is this the first time that these kind of attacks have happened?
No. Between 2019 to today, there is the fourth.
Right.
The fourth one. You have two in Park Penjari and two in Park W.
Those are neighboring parks, right?
Yeah,
all on the border with Burkina Faso and Niger.
Burkina Faso and Niger.
Solutions. I remember there was the kidnapping of, I think, two people,
and they were delivered in Burkina Faso. We have one person died in Benin, and two soldiers from France also died during the operation.
So what is the immediate reaction of the government in Benin when these things happen?
Yeah, the immediate reaction is that they send army. They send the army to supply forest ranger who were working there usually. So after that, there is not really a coordination action between the other part of security compartment. So I think now they are start looking at this problem differently. in different way now, because after the last one, I hear that all the head of security department met automatically at the president's, and then they talk about the strategy. Our general director talk about what we have to do as forester. They talk about our even we are not working. How do we have to our behavior in the society as we are forester or military or something like that, especially the people who are walking around national park. If you are in army or like forester or custom or something like, if you wear a uniform, you have to be very, very prudent,
Careful.
very, very careful, because it seems like the next target will be military or this kind of people walking around. So it's just what he come out to us, and then they may say, okay, be careful, don't go there, don't run, get out during the night, something like that. But nothing about how to address the problem. Maybe it's still in high level before the implementing them.
So perhaps it's good that there is more attention to the need for coordination at the transboundary and regional level. But we need to make the point that it's not just a military solution. It has to be a military solution plus other means.
Yeah, it's probably
currently it's like they are still thinking about military solution. So how to send more people to secure the frontier, to secure the protected areas, that what they are working on. But now I think we need to tell them they have also to work with the community, to take into account that the community is not, we are not going to look them as a partner of the criminals, because it's like that now. You know, if somebody want to make this kind of attack, he has to stay within the community for a certain moment to look at, to see how to bring all this stuff within the park, to have artisanal bomb.
Like mines.
Okay, artisanal mines to put them in the park. So all these things needs preparation. So it will be done within the community. So for now, I think they will start looking about that. But we need to help them with solution, with thinking, with new mind.
And does it seem to you like the wildlife in the park is being affected?
The wildlife in the park will be affected because currently, the park manager are not able to go in all the parts of the park. Some of because they put the mine on the road or on the side. So when you are doing the patrols, you can just the patrols. You are going, there is nobody around. And then boom. Like what happened last time is not like they come with gun to attack. No, it was a mine. Maybe it were there many days ago before, and then they come there and then boom, and 5 soldiers die. So
I mean, what can I say? This is a sad state of affairs. I wish we were not discussing this now, but it is the truth. It is the hard truth, and we do need to look for.
But I have a question then. Who is equipping these militias with advanced weaponry like mines and semi-automatic rifles?
This kind of mine is made with local materials.
Wow.
It's very important to address this situation. It make even me, if I know how to put this and this together, I can do it. It's like that now. It's a local, they use local material to make this.
That's a new paradigm.
Yeah.
In
it's
the
not
whole
the
issue
sophisticated material. No. It's just. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we could talk about this for a long time, but what is important, as you mentioned, is action. And I'm sure our role is to make suggestions, is to analyze the problems and to sort of guide our leaders towards finding these nuggets of wisdom that would contribute to addressing the issue.
Am I allowed to ask you a question?
Sure.
So you're working on a USAID project, which is a significant program. Do you think you could have leverage back in Washington to make people aware of these situations on the ground? And if you were proposing solutions, would they adhere to those solutions? Do you feel that your project has a voice, is what I'm saying, I guess?
Yeah, I think WABiLED and WABIC before it are fortunate to have had people at the US Embassy here, USAID, who actually listen to us. And WABiLED was designed as a learning program. So WABIC before it and now WABiLED were designed as learning programs. And so we are very big on not just monitoring what we do and the impact of what we do, but trying to draw lessons from how we did it, why we have the results we are having, and what the implications are for the future of managing natural resources. But I think here in ECOWAS, in the West Africa region, we also have a voice. Because I'm sitting here with Ulysse, not because Ulysse is part of the WABiLED program as working for the US government, no, but he's here as a partner because he's representing the government of Benin. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that we do in WABiLED is to work with government. So we do work with NGOs and civil society, but we make government our priority. We feel that there are people in government who are not corrupt. There are people in government who want to do the right thing. And those people need to be encouraged. They need to be the people we are talking to, the people we are working with. And if we can empower them to have a voice within their own governments, then we don't make the decisions for them, but we provide the platforms for them to make their own decisions and implement them.
That's a great point, actually, because one thing that we're working on as part of that German-funded program is moving from project to process. So moving from creating sort of shadow institutions of government agencies and actually working within the system. And if you remember in Cameroon, all the government, when we worked there together, all of the government agencies said, why don't you work with us? We're here. We are the responsible institutions that should be implementing these things. You can help us, but don't do it separate from us. And if you remember, most of the big projects in Cameroon that we worked with had offices outside of government institutions. And they create these sort of, as I say, shadow institutions, which when they leave, their legacy is almost zero. So it's really gratifying to hear that, you're working with government, not outside of that government structure. And I think you'll have much more impact in that respect.
I am convinced. I mean, I look at the current program for training scientist staff and sending them to do this master's program. This is the third cohort we're doing in 2022. And we did the first cohort in 2016. The same year, I had the opportunity of going to the Scientist Cup in Johannesburg. What struck me was the fact that Niger and Benin had sort of an open conflict with Togo and Burkina Faso over the lion proposal. Yeah. And so you have Niger and Benin who absolutely want to conserve lions, no hunting. And you have Togo and Burkina who think sport hunting is okay. I mean, it does bring some revenue to the wildlife services so they can manage the parks. So two different approaches to managing wildlife.
In the same area.
Where I have a problem is the fact that it is in front of the rest of the world that 4 West African countries left West Africa to go have an argument, sort of.
In Johannesburg.
I'm like, we could have dealt with this in West Africa. Yeah. So part of our work since 2016 has been building critical mass of people in each West African state who understand what CITES is about, and then getting them to talk to each other and coordinate. And so in 2018, we were able to bring all the CITES focal points together in Abuja and discuss the proposals that would be tabled at the COP. And they came out with a common position. They made a declaration that ECOWAS signed up to. Now, what that has done is put ECOWAS in the driving seat, first of all, for an institution that had no knowledge about CITES, no interest. At this point in time, we see them trying to take the leadership and ownership of the processes that are ongoing on CITES in West Africa. But it also meant, and we saw this at the 2019 CITES COP in Geneva, that for the first time, West Africa was speaking with one voice. Yeah. And every single vote they went to, they won, which shows the power of unity, the power of coordination, and of having people who understand what they are doing and why they are doing it. So this year we are hoping to have a pre-COP meeting, and we are having this meeting before the individual countries determine what proposals they want to submit to CITES. And I think Ulysse here is one of the people coordinating that preparation. I don't know if you want to tell us something. What are you thinking? What are you planning, Ulysse?
About this, you are right. What about you say? We are planning to meet before and to see what is the different proposition from each country. For example, Benin have proposition on hippopotamus to move hippopotamus from appendix 2 to appendix 1. And we have already, for example, shared this proposition with all the member states in Africa. And we start discussion. Even we have informal online discussion on this proposition, and with the support of WABiLED, and we are planning to meet, and everybody will come with its proposition, and we talk about. And once we start this discussion, as you say, for example, when we talk about hippopotamus, some of the range countries they are not agree yet. They are not agree yet because they need more information. They need more thought about what we really need and why we want to move this species. So by this discussion, I'm sure that they will see the importance to move this species from appendix 2 to appendix 1. This is for the example I can took from Benin. And so I think it's what I can say about this. Yeah. So we are planning this meeting because we learned from the last COP how we won, as you say. The word is we won all the population we have as West Africa population we had. We go through this population and we won because it's systematical. When we have to vote, the vote is for the same from all of us. So this kind of situation is expected for the next COP we had in Panama this year, by the end of this year. So we have to prepare ourselves before that. So
it's been really interesting listening to both of you talk about the level of commitments, the discussions, the talking. Yeah. So what we've seen over the last 20 years is a shift towards more of these big events, whether it's COPs or CITES meetings in lovely places like Johannesburg, Geneva, Panama. A lot of people in suits flying around the world. A lot of commitments made. And it's like the Sustainable Development Goals. You can commit all you like, but those commitments are not binding. Everything is voluntary, even with CITES, even with any climate change treaty. It's the CBD, Convention on Biodiversity. All of those commitments are not legally binding. Can we trust them? Okay, here's a different way. So does something like CITES have teeth?
Yeah.
So if Benin says, right, we're going to completely ban all lion hunting, and yet lion hunting goes on, can Benin get a slap on the hand for not controlling their own commitments or policing their own commitments?
I would like to hear what Ulysse thinks about this, but I would say that CITES is said to be the only convention that has teeth. And I think because it's based on the economics of the natural resource use and countries seeing that they can make revenue from natural resources. Of course. And so today Guinea is suspended from trade and it means they're losing revenue. And you can talk to a minister of economy in Guinea and tell him we would have been exporting X amount of rosewood. And this is how much we would have made if we were considered compliant. So you can make the argument for compliance and show that there can be benefits to it. But I do admit that so far we have focused a lot more on the enforcement angle of saying this is what you should not do, rather than trying to build the opportunities side of it and saying you could domesticate certain species. You could make sure that you have your management systems in place, and therefore you don't need to reduce your quotas. You could even increase your quotas. And I think that's what's happening now in South Africa, Namibia, Botswana, and Zimbabwe with elephants and ivory. So yes, it does pose a different problem, and we can talk more about that for the rest of Africa. But it shows that with the right management, CITES has got them thinking in the right direction. What do you think, Ulysse?
Yeah, I think the same. The second problem we have here is not, is not to put all the species in high level of appendice society, but we really need capacity building. For example, you talk about breeding. Breed species which is appendix 1, then we can trade it in appendix 2, need capacity building. So we need also not only for the breeders, but also for the monitoring of this kind of activities. Because if you don't do it well, it's like you will going to laundering the species coming from the wild, because it will go through this kind of institution and go in the market like a wild thing. So we will need capacity. It's why we are still using CITES to protect our species. Even in our country, we are still doing conservation action. We are setting law that can be helpful to conserve species. We are doing at our level. So there is a big deal. We still need to use this kind of tools.
Yeah. But that's a really interesting point. But isn't the very essence of monetizing these resources the driver of the illegal trade as well? And I know that I'm coming from a very left-wing Marxist perspective here, but by commoditizing a product, you are creating a market, or you're at least making it available to the market. So if you have, whether it's legal or illegal, that ivory that ends up in Southeast Asia or the rhino horn in Vietnam or wherever it may end up, the commercialization of nature has probably contributed to this problem. And we don't think about nature. We touched on this earlier, for its intrinsic value. And there's a big difference between monetary value and intrinsic value. And I think that, we've all worked in the field when we've worked with local people. They have a deeper understanding and empathy in terms of the intrinsic value of the world around them than we do, because we come from that perspective. Well, if Guinea can't sell rosewood, they're losing revenue. Well, it's because they're allowing illegal harvesting of that rosewood. That's why they're not allowed to trade it. You can feel free to edit any of this out. I don't want to get anyone in trouble. But I think this monetization, and I know that I'm coming from a very academic, kind of privileged, it's easy for me to say, perspective. But isn't that half the problem, that this neoliberal approach to conservation is contributing to its very lack of success, if that makes sense?
You're right. But I would also say that look at COVID. COVID came and we were not prepared for it. And within a few weeks, the world changed dramatically. And I sort of feel that the world will never be the same again. So some things, we don't want them, but once they are there, we have to learn to live with them and work with them. So I look at you are right that monetizing nature and natural resources does create the wish to gain a bigger proportion of the proceeds of what these resources can bring. And that's the problem. However, I look at the communities we work with, and they don't worry about earning millions of dollars from the resources around them. The problem is coming from the fact that there is a market in Geneva, there is a market in China, there is a market in Vietnam. Except that once that market is there, and once the information is here, then these people don't see why they should not get a share of that market. That's where the problem lies. And which means we have to be able to offer them something that is at least enough to take care of their basic needs. That's the bottom line. And then be able to tell them, you could look at things a different way. The way you looked at things before was actually a better way than the way we have been looking at things. But when you tell them that, many times the response you get is what is becoming quite cliche, that, oh, but the Western nations have developed by destroying their environment, and we are being asked to remain in poverty. So that's what we have to face when we work with these communities. Explain to them why it's important for us to manage our natural resources wisely, even if we want to develop.
I take that, completely on board. I mean, it's the landscapes we work in as part of that German funding project. The first thing people say is, okay, we'll come to your meeting, but what's in it for us? And if you're bringing a project here, it has to bring development, and that people want to see tangible outputs. And this role of facilitation through the stakeholder, kind of multi-stakeholder platforms, unless they see it in action, it's very difficult to describe those benefits. But I just want to pick up on, I'll just say one last thing, because if you mentioned COVID. So there's strong evidence to suggest that COVID, along with other zoonotic diseases, HIV, AIDS, Ebola, Zika, transmitted from mammals to society through some kind of zoonotic transmission, usually due to deforestation, the forest frontier. So there are some really good figures. We want to talk about economics. Here we go. The human society tends to be reactive, not proactive. It's a bit like your doctor treating you for a heart attack, but not getting your heart checked out in the years before you have the heart attack. You know, estimates vary, but it's around, if we wanted to avoid deforestation, which we have enough land to cultivate oil palm, soy, cattle without clearing new lands, avoided deforestation would cost around $300 billion a year. That sounds like a lot of money. But it avoids entering and eating into that constant sort of forest frontier. The cost of COVID economically, globally, thus far, is $64 trillion. So we react. It's just a new study that's come out. So we react to things. The British Columbia floods that happened 15 years ago, a professor of forestry in my faculty said, unless you do something about some of the serious clear cutting on some of these slopes, we're going to have a problem with floods. In November last year, we had catastrophic floods, which destroyed the agriculture base in the Fraser Valley. We can't buy, cauliflowers are like $10 a head at the moment. It has a long knock-on effect. But he wrote a fantastic blog recently, valued the proactive costs in the, tens of millions of dollars. The damage has been billions of dollars. So as a human society, we've reacted to COVID in the very same way. So we can avoid these situations, and it'll be much more cost effective. Anyway, that's a non sequitur really compared to this discussion, but it's an interesting.
I totally agree, and for me, it's okay. Yes, sometimes we are reacting, but even as we react, how do we learn from what is happening to preempt other similar scenarios? And that's what we're not doing. So I think we'll continue this discussion elsewhere.
Yeah.
Perhaps off record, over a beer,
yes.
in the car, etc. Thank you for being part of this second episode of the WABiLED podcast series. WABiLED is funded by the USAID. It has been a great time talking to you all, and goodbye until next time.
Thank you.